What is up, Omnibus collectors? Riley here, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 most wanted DC Rebirth Omnibus editions, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so I'm really excited to make this video. A couple weeks back I did my top 10 most wanted New 52 Omnis, and I mentioned that I was going to continue and do another one about Rebirth, and I do have plans to do more most wanted Omnibus things for different characters, different teams, different publishers, different eras, and all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned to the channel and you'll see a lot of these videos like this. So if you like this one, definitely make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so you get notified of all the upcoming most wanted Omni videos. Now if you've never visited my channel before, if this is your first video of mine that you've ever seen, thank you so much for deciding to click on that video, and I hope that you'll decide to click the subscribe button and as well hit that bell so you're notified. I put up 3 videos every week. One video like these where I talk about comics, one video where I talk about manga, and another video where I talk about new single issue releases every single week. Now, of course, I want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon subscribers. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting me and supporting my channel. If you watch my channel and enjoy what I do and would like to support me as well, I do have a link to my Patreon down below in the description. Now, let's start talking about Rebirth. Real quick, what is Rebirth? Basically, it's the next line of books that happened after the whole New 52 continuity ended. There was the New 52, and the last year worth of the New 52 issues was called DCU, DCYOU. And then after that, they started up Rebirth, which lasted for about a couple years. After Rebirth is the current era, basically. It doesn't really have a banner across it, but it's just basically post-Rebirth DC. Now, I'm only talking about books from the Rebirth era, so from the beginning of Rebirth with the new issue number 1s that came out, all the way up to about the end of the Dark Knight's Metal event. Everything that happens after that is going to be post-Rebirth, and that will be a separate video later on. Now, Rebirth basically was started to kind of amend some of the things that people didn't like about the New 52, bring back certain characters, get rid of certain concepts, add certain concepts, all these things that people didn't like about the New 52 was supposed to be fixed by Rebirth. And they did an okay job of that, though they kind of did muddle things a little bit more in some cases. But overall, they slimmed down the publishing line, brought back all the big characters, put a lot of new writers onto a lot of books, had some writers who were doing awesome work continue on into the new titles. There was a lot of good things to like about Rebirth. So I'm going to be talking about 10 books that I really like that I think deserve an omnibus. Now, one of the things I mentioned in my New 52 video was about the fact that back then with the New 52, they did take a lot of chances. DC put out a lot of books that usually wouldn't be done, and usually at this point wouldn't make it past 6, maybe 12 issues. A lot of titles like I, Vampire, Frankenstein Agent of Shade, or Demon Knights, these books would not really happen now. And unfortunately, it seems like they kind of shied away from all that stuff when they did Rebirth, and we got just the main books, the Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, those types of things. There were a couple of different books, though, that popped up that were not typical, were not like the things that we were used to. And in those, one of the ones that I really enjoyed that I think does not get enough attention is Superwoman. Now, Phil Jimenez started this Superwoman series, and basically it spins out of the end of the New 52 Superman titles. At the end of New 52, spoilers, there was a event where basically New 52 Superman sacrifices himself, and in his stead we have the post-crisis version of Superman who came out after Convergence, and he winds up taking his place, and post-crisis Superman winds up staying and is the Superman that we have during Rebirth. Now, when the New 52 Superman dies, his powers wind up going over to New 52 Lois Lane and New 52 Lana Lang, and they wind up becoming Superwoman. Now, these two different Superwomen have their own powers and all that stuff, and they got their own ongoing series at the beginning of Rebirth, and it was a great title. Eventually, the title would only focus on Lana Lang, which was great because we really don't get to focus on Lana too much, and I was happy to have this title, which lasted for a whole 18 issues, get to focus on this character and give me a new appreciation for Lana Lang. Now, if you have not read this title, because I know a lot of people missed out on it, and you're a fan of Superman or the Superman franchise, I highly recommend it. It is collected right now across 3 paperbacks, or you can read it digitally, but I'm really hoping that one day they consider possibly putting it into a single volume. I think it's a very rare possibility that it happens, but I can dream. My number 9 is another one of those series that I feel like people kind of skipped over, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about. and that was New Superman by Jean Luen Yang. Yang was writing some of the Superman titles before the New 52 came towards its end, and he was doing a pretty decent job over there. But whenever the Rebirth era started, Superman went over to Peter Tomasi, and Action Comics went over to Dan Jurgens. So Yang luckily was able to get a new title focusing on a brand new character that he would create called Kong Kenan. And Kong Kenan was a teenager in China who was kind of a bully. He's really brash. He's kind of the opposite of Clark Kent. But he has his heart in the right place, and some events happen, and eventually he gets taken into this organization that decides to give him Superman's powers. And it turns out that there's this whole organization in China that's trying to put together a Justice League of China team. And so on top of having this Chinese version of Superman, we have their versions of Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and all kinds of other characters involved with the Justice League. It was a really fun title, and we got to see this young, new, superpowered character in Kong Kenan, the new Superman, as he evolved and as he grew into his role and as he became more of a hero. And we also got to see all these other original characters pop up left and right, and it was a really fun title. If you want a continuity light super title, this is definitely the one to pick up. It lasted for 24 issues, so Yang had a lot of room to tell his story, and he did a really great job with it. Hopefully, we could see that collected into one big omnibus edition, and I think that Yang has been continuing to do a lot of noteworthy material when it comes to comics. He did the Superman Smashes the Klan comic, so I hope that DC might see at one point that his name is one that's worth publishing a book for, and maybe we'll see an omnibus edition, if not at least nicer paperback editions of New Superman. Number 8 is Deathstroke by Priest. I've never been a big Deathstroke fan. I've always liked him as a villain in like the Teen Titans series and stuff like that, but I've never read any of Deathstroke's solo material. But when I saw that during Rebirth, Priest would be taking over as the new writer on Deathstroke, I knew that I had to check it out. Priest is such a different and individual writer that writes in such a different way from all the other writers that we see, and it was such a weird concept to me to have someone like Priest take over on Deathstroke, a character that seems pretty one-dimensional, a character that doesn't seem like he would need a deeper writer like Priest to write him. But I'm glad that he did, because Priest gave us such an interesting and fun story that really expanded on Deathstroke and his supporting cast of characters. And we had a lot of really awesome story arcs in here, like the Deathstroke versus Batman arc and the Arkham arc and all kinds of stuff like that. Plus, great artwork throughout the entire series. This run lasted for 50 issues, and I would say that while it is a pretty thick volume, it's not unlike DC to do 50-issue plus omnibus editions, and I think that this one should be put into one single giant omnibus, because I would worry that if they wanted to split this into two, that they publish the first one with the first half of the series, and then we'd never see the second one. Number 7 is Green Arrow by Ben Percy. Nowadays, Ben Percy is a little more well known over at Marvel for doing stuff like X-Force and Wolverine, and he's been doing excellent work over there, but before he wrote any of the X-Men books, he was over at DC, and during the New 52 era, he actually wrote the last 12 issues of Green Arrow, and that's where I first saw his name attached to any comic book. And with that, I really enjoyed what Percy was doing on Green Arrow in those last dozen issues. So I was very happy to find out that he was going to continue writing the Green Arrow in Rebirth. And he continued writing Green Arrow for another 38 issues during Rebirth, and he did such a great job of returning the character from being the New 52 version that was basically trying to emulate the version that we saw on the Arrow TV show, and kind of taking him back to being the older version of the character that we recognized from decades past. Not only in his appearance, but also in his attitude and the style of stories, giving us a lot of more politically charged stories similar to what we got back in older runs. I'm very much a huge fan of this run on Green Arrow, and he was joined by a lot of really awesome artists throughout this run, and I do think this would make an awesome omnibus edition, especially after we're finally getting some more focus on Green Arrow in omnibus edition with that Mike Grell Omni that just came out. Now, this would be another really thick volume, collecting issues 41 through 52, the annual from the New 52, the Rebirth one-shot, and the first 38 issues of the Rebirth series. Optionally, they could also expand this and make it a 2-volume set, and also include the last 12 issues of the Rebirth run, which were written by various other writers outside of Ben Percy. And my number 6 choice is Batman by Tom King. I know this is a hugely divisive run, but in my opinion, it is a really awesome take on the character of Batman. Not only on Batman, but also on a lot of his supporting cast and a lot of his villains. Tom King gave us a great Batman, a great Catwoman, and a great Joker, Riddler, and especially a great version of Bane that came back to menace Batman multiple times throughout this run. Unfortunately, his run was cut short as he was taken off the book at issue 85 when he was meant to go on until issue 100, but we are going to see this run wrap up more or less in the upcoming Batman Catwoman maxi series that's starting at the end of this year. I think my favorite part though about King's run on Batman is the fact that he kind of embellished on Batman's mental health and had the character deal with depression in a way that was very believable to me, especially for me, someone that does deal with depression and mental health issues myself. It gave me a way that I was able to relate to Batman more than I ever have before. And when I think about it, honestly, it makes sense to have the character deal with depression when the entire focus of his life is the fact that he watched his parents killed in front of him, was raised as an orphan by his butler, and then surrounded himself in darkness as he vowed to seek vengeance for his parents' death. It makes a lot of sense for someone like that to have some sort of mental health issues and deal with depression in some capacity, and I really liked that King went there with the character. I know a lot of people didn't like that part, but for me, it was a lot of what made this special. Now, even though he got taken off the run early, he still did do a lot of work on Batman, and I think that this would have to be split into 2 or 3 volumes. I've mapped it out for 2 pretty thick 50-issue volumes. The first volume including the Batman Rebirth one-shot, as well as issues 1 through 6 and 9 through 50, and the first 2 annuals of this series. I skipped issues 7 and 8 because they are part of a crossover which is included in the Detective Comics by James Tynion, the 4th omnibus that's coming out pretty soon. The second volume will have a lot of other stuff in there, issues 51 through 63 and 66 through 85 of the ongoing series. It skips issues 64 and 65 because those were part of the Josh Williamson written Price crossover, which would be part of a Flash collection more so than a Batman collection. Annual number 3 would be in here, as well as some material from Secret Files 1 and 2, the Batman Elmer Fudd special issue, material from DC Nation 0, material from Robin 80th Anniversary Special, and the Catwoman 80th Anniversary Special, as well as material from Detective Comics 1000, and material from the upcoming Detective Comics 1027, and of course the entire 12-issue Batman Catwoman maxi series as well. I think there's supposed to be a Batman Catwoman special that happens around that time as well, so it would include that as well. So 2 mostly even 50 or so issue omnibus volumes for this run. Now we pop into the top 5. Number 5 is Aquaman by Dan Abnett. Much like Ben Percy, Abnett started writing Aquaman before the Rebirth Era started, but he only wrote the last 4 or so issues of the series before the New 52 ended. After that, he went on for quite a while before Kelly Sue DeConnick took over, and he did a really great job in giving us a really awesome Aquaman story that kind of shied away from a lot of the superheroics and focused more on the political aspects of Aquaman as he is the king of Atlantis. And we got a lot of focus on Atlantis as well as characters from the other kingdoms, and a lot of characters that we might be familiar with from the Aquaman movie that came out around the time this series was going on do make appearances in here. So if you are someone who is familiar with the movie, this was a great series to jump into as well. And there was some awesome artwork in here, especially a short arc with art by Stepan Sejic. And I apologize if I mispronounced his name, but he did some amazing work here. Now, all in all, I think this would have to be cut into 2 volumes because in total there are 64 issues. He did do issues 48 through 52 of the New 52 series, the Rebirth one-shot, the first 42 issues of the Rebirth series, the first 2 annuals of Rebirth as well. There were some crossovers. There was issues 45 and 46 of Suicide Squad, issues 9 through 12 of Justice League, and then the 2 Drowned Earth one-shots, as well as the 6-issue Mira miniseries. Moving on, number 4 on my list is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps by Robert Venditti. Now, Venditti had already been writing Green Lantern since issue 21 of the New 52, so he already had over 30 issues worth of Lantern material under his belt. And I talked about that run during my New 52 Most Wanted Omnibus video, and about how the beginning of that run was a little rough for me, but by the time he got around, especially to that last year of the New 52, he was doing amazing work with the character. Fortunately, DC decided to keep him around, and not just for a little bit, he got to stay around for 50 issues of this new ongoing title. Now, he did a lot of great work with Hal Jordan before, and on this book, he continues to do great work and proves that he has an amazing voice for the character, and developed him a lot more, as well as having great voices for a lot of the other members of the Corps and a lot of the other big villains for the Green Lantern. There was a lot of awesome story arcs here, a lot of great action, and it was just a really fantastic series. I had enjoyed what Venditti was doing during the New 52, but I think that he really shines in this series during Rebirth. Number 3 on my list goes to The Flash by Josh Williamson. Now, this for me was definitely one of the best Rebirth titles of the entire era. I think one of the most telling things about how good this run is that he wrote the series for over 100 issues, all said and done, and I couldn't tell that he had been going on for that long because it always felt fresh. By the time he announced that he was ending his run, I was like, oh man, he has been on there for quite a while, and I counted all up, and tie-ins included. This run is 109 issues. Now, Josh Williamson did a great job of writing The Flash in a way that was fantastic for new readers, but also great and intriguing for old readers. He used all of the great characters and villains that we're familiar with from the Flash titles, but he also expands on the concepts and introduces new heroes, new villains, new characters that make it something that's really exciting. And another thing that shows why Williamson's Flash was so great is because even though all these different events and crossovers happen, he never skips a beat, and he constantly makes sure that he's expanding on the things that are happening in the DC universe and making really awesome storylines dealing with all the new things that we're seeing pop up from different things like the Metal event and stuff like that. Williamson did a great job with Barry Allen, and he also did a great job with the rest of the Flash family, and I'm very happy that he got to write this series for so long. Now, he did mention that the final issue of his run on Flash is not going to be the last comic he writes with the Flash family. I don't know if that means he's coming back for an event, or maybe he's just writing them into an arc of something else like Batman Superman, or maybe he's doing a mini-series somewhere down the line. But if I'm to separate this into Omnis and map it out as it is right now, like I said, there are 109 total issues, and the way that I would split it is 3 volumes. Number 1 consists of the Flash Rebirth one-shot, the first 33 issues, as well as issues 21 and 22 of Batman. Those 2 issues of Batman are part of the Button crossover. Volume 2 has issues 34 through 65, as well as annuals 1 and 2, and Batman issues 64 and 65. Those are part of the Price crossover, which is kind of a tie-in / aftermath of Heroes in Crisis. And then the third and final volume would be issues 66 through 88, as well as 750 through 762, and the third annual, wrapping everything up before Kevin Shinnick's run begins with 763. And if you haven't read this run, I'm just going to say Kevin Shinnick has some big shoes to fill. Number 2, Dark Knight's Metal. Like I mentioned before, this is kind of the event that ended the whole Rebirth line, and it led into the DC's New Age of Heroes and the current post-Rebirth continuity and all that good stuff. This was a really fun series. I know there was a lot of people who were not big on it, but for me, I thought it was just a perfect comic event, something that is fun, it's fun to read, there's some cool ideas in there, it's just filled with action, great artwork, great characters, and it's also something that was rewarding for people who have been reading along with a lot of what Scott Snyder had been doing for quite a while, as it follows up on a lot of the things that happened early on in his Batman run. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this and a lot of new issues, a lot of one-shots, a lot of tie-ins and stuff, as we got to see this new dark universe that was unfolding, and we got to see these dark versions of familiar characters who are kind of amalgamized with versions of Batman. So this is where we got the now super popular Batman Who Laughs, which is basically Batman fused with a Joker as far as the concept goes. So as far as the contents of this book go, this would include the Dark Days the Forge, Dark Days the Casting, which led into the event, the entire 6 issues of Dark Knight's Metal, and then all the one-shots dealing with all the different Batmen from the Dark Universes, Batman the Red Death, Batman the Murder Machine, Dawnbreaker, Batman the Drowned, Batman the Merciless, Batman the Devastator, Batman Who Laughs, Batman Lost one-shot, Hawkman Found one-shot, the Dark Dark Knight's Rising the Wild Hunt one-shot, which saw Grant Morrison coming back to write a little bit of this issue, which was really exciting for me. Plus issue 12 of Teen Titans, 29 of Nightwing, 26 of Suicide Squad, 32 of Green Arrow, 33 of The Flash, 32 and 33 of Justice League, and 32 of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. So this would be a pretty decent-sized book, and it's one that I guarantee is eventually going to happen, given that DC is very focused on making these omnibus editions of all of their big major events. Now, before I get to my number one choice, I've got two honorable mentions that I want to put out there. The first honorable mention is Nightwing by Tim Seeley. Tim Seeley was writing Grayson before, during the end of the New 52, and he carried over his work with Dick Grayson over into Nightwing, which was a great return to form for the character, and it was a fantastically fun run. He did write the series for the first 34 issues, so I would say that at least an omnibus would include those 34 issues, but they could also pad it out by including issues 35 through 50, which included work by Sam Humphries, the duo of Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, and also had an arc at the end by Ben Percy before it led into Lobdell's Rick Grayson run, which I don't really want to talk about. And the other book as an honorable mention is All-Star Batman, which was basically Scott Snyder came back after finishing up his run on Batman and wrote a quick 15-issue Batman series where he was joined by artists John Romita Jr., Francesco Francavilla, Jock, and Raphael Albuquerque to tell some different stories dealing with the character during the beginning of the Rebirth era. I would love to see this in some sort of deluxe edition hardcover or maybe even an absolute edition, and I think it'd be also kind of cool to add in the Batman in the Signal 3-issue miniseries, as there was a Batman in the Signal backup feature in this series that kind of mixed with that miniseries. And now, of course, my number one choice is Greg Rucka's return to Wonder Woman. Rucka had done Wonder Woman before Gail Simone's run, which was before the New 52, and it is one of the most praised runs, especially one of the most praised modern runs on the character. And he returned during the Rebirth era, and I think that his writing was exactly what the franchise needed, especially as the movie was around the corner and there was a lot of people who were probably going to be wanting to check out some Wonder Woman comics after watching the great movie that came out. Now, he only wrote the first 25 issues, but he did a great job here telling different stories that utilized a lot of her greatest friends and greatest foes, and there was even a really cool concept where he was telling, because of the bi-weekly shipping schedule that it had, he would do one issue every month was focused on her year one story, whereas the other issue every month was focused on something happening in the current timeline, and reading both of those together, the stories kind of worked well with each other and formed a really great narrative. I would love to see this run collected into a single omnibus edition, but there are a couple of oversized hardcovers for that run, so if they don't do an omnibus, it's not the biggest foul in the world, because we still can have this amazing run in an oversized edition. However, maybe if they did do the omnibus edition, they could also continue and have this contain the runs that followed it from Shea Fontana and from maybe even James Robinson, G. Willow Wilson, and going all the way up to possibly Steve Orlando. And now, of course, we have Mariko Tamaki going on, and she's doing a great job on the run. But at the very least, I would love to see this run as an omnibus with the Greg Rucka stuff, because how could you go wrong with Rucka, really? So those are my choices for my top 10 most wanted DC Rebirth Omnibus editions. If I didn't talk about something that you would love to see in Omnibus, please let me know in the comments down below. If you would buy any of these books, let me know in the comments down below as well. These are all books that I would definitely spend my money on because I loved each one of these runs, and I think that they do deserve the oversized treatment. Thank you so much for watching this video with me. Once again, if you're new to the channel or you just haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you're notified of all the awesome videos I put out every single week. And with that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.